Hey, everybody, welcome back to Red Road Paranormal. My name is Christina Bloom. I am your co host along with Bobby Resnick Calkins. I am a psychic medium, a paranormal investigator with Adirondack Park Paranormal Society. I'm an author and obviously a vodcast host and a bunch of other stuff. So, with that, I am going to, oh, yeah, I forgot Alaskan Native Heritage, but I don't have any tribal affiliation. So with that, I will pass it over to Rez.
Hey everybody, Favor Resnick here. Obviously member of the Stockbridge Munsee Tribe, Band of Mohicans, paranormal investigator, cryptid investigator with the Wisconsin-based team, Cryptids and Anomalies in the Paranormal Society. Paranormal Society. Also psychic medium. Yeah, gotta learn to breathe once in a
Got to
while,
learn to
guys.
breathe.
Yeah. And today we have the CEO of the Paranormal Family Channel, Mr. Eldon McInville. Tell us a little
Eldon
bit.
McInville.
Didn't they think
Hey,
what I said, Alden? Ah,
he got it
I
right
told.
the first time. He got it right the first time.
Okay, good.
All right. Told you I
So
was gonna
yeah, I'm,
screw
I'm
it
glad
up.
to be. I'm glad to be here, guys. Thanks for getting me on here, and I appreciate the time you're spending with me. And I really look forward to this hour and see what we can stir up here amongst us.
Yeah, let's start
Definitely.
stirring the pot, huh?
I'd like to. That's always fun to do. You never know
Yeah.
who might come out of the woodworks when you do that.
Yeah, hey, there
Exactly.
we go. All
So,
right.
how long you been in the paranormal field?
I've been investigating now for about 14 years. However, I did my studies for about a decade before that, so I'd say comfortably going on about 25 years total.
Okay,
Nice.
good time there.
Yeah.
Wealth of
Oh yeah.
knowledge.
Yeah.
So let's
Well,
talk about the researching it though. To us about that ten years of researching. Like explain that because I think a lot
oh
of people
wow.
don't know that. You know what I mean?
So I mean, I learned how to study in school. And I always learned you get your classroom stuff done first, and then you go do your practicals afterwards. And that's kind of the approach I took at it. Going to the library, researching facts of what you could find in the field. Trying not to take the word of too many people that are kind of shady. You always want to get your facts put in order. You want to know the ins and outs and the how comes and the whys and the things like that. Some of the things that I had the hardest time with in my research was why are we using some of the equipment we're using in this field and how does it apply to investigating? It confused me to no end, and that probably took me the longest to understand some of that and why that was. The good news to that is, I was able to come up with some answers concerning EMF, and the audio and the video piece of it is pretty self-explanatory, and that was probably the easiest, especially when you can understand frequency, you can understand light, different light spectrums, and then if you can understand spectrums of your audio frequencies too, that we as humans we can only hear and see, just so much. But those cameras, like example, we see the full spectrum cameras out there that can see in a full wider range of spectrums. This is why they're able to pick things up. EMF was a little harder for me to understand. Um, and I think that's also still the case today with most investigators. I think that's probably the most misunderstood piece of investigating that there is out there is EMF. One of the most common things I've heard is, if I have my cell phone and if I put it on airplane mode, well, I'm good to go. No, absolutely not. Airplane mode doesn't stop your EMF and it doesn't stop the interference because it's still going to be searching. It's still going to be working. So the best course of action for your cell phone, leave it in your car, shut it off, don't even have it on because airplane mode is not going to help you at all. So this is one of the things that I've actually discovered, and I've played around with it quite a bit. So yeah, don't trust the airplane mode thing. That's one thing right there. But the equipment piece definitely is the one thing that I'd say in my research over that decade or so was the hardest for me to understand. Um, some of what I used that I found the most useful, believe it or not, is some of the teachings from Ed and Lorraine Warren, to be honest. They were some really, really good information pieces with their stories, with their books, with some of the cases they had. I really used a lot of that to my advantage and to try to learn, mostly honestly, what I had learned from Lorraine rather than from Ed. Even though I'm not a psychic medium and nor do I even try to count to be, a lot of her information and teachings I found to be more useful than I found Ed's to be. However, I think Ed was knowledgeable in what he did. So I went to libraries. I got every book I could. Um, I watched programs on, happenings. When I started to see shows, come out on TV, and we know some of those shows. I just kind of had to look at that, and unfortunately, the shows were showing a lot of things contrary to my studies, and so I couldn't quite understand where they were coming from. And the way that I was better able to finally come to an understanding is you got to separate Hollywood from fact. So that helped me quite a bit. All right. Hollywood is Hollywood and that's where it needs to be kept. But when you're dealing with clients and things like that, and you're trying to really investigate and you're a true investigator and you're really truly trying to get to the bottom of what's going on, you leave all that Hollywood mumbo jumbo where it belongs. And you go in there and you do your research, you do your due diligence for your clients, and you take care of them. What you get out of that, it doesn't even matter. This is again why we don't charge for our services, because it's not about us, it's about our client, and that's what is most important.
Yep. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Especially not charging a client. I've heard of churches even charging people to come out and investigate paranormal activity in someone's home and being turned away because the family can't afford it. I think it's utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
It's
Yeah,
these
the
people are
last
asking
client,
for help.
yeah, the last client we had, unfortunately, before getting a hold of us, she had talked to a psychic medium here local, and the psychic medium came in for basically, well, didn't even come in, actually talked to him on the phone, had them take a picture of themselves and send it to her, via, messaging, and basically did a reading from the photograph and spent probably not even an hour and charged them $900 for that.
What? That's
And I heard,
insane. I mean, I'm a professional psychic medium. I charge for readings. It's how I make my living. But that's
mm,
insane.
yeah, needless to say, I came out of my seat. I mean, I come unglued. I
Mhm.
lost my mind. I'm like, what in the daylights is going on here? Are we really in this for financial gain? Or are we in this as true paranormal researchers and trying to help these people we come in contact with? What are we really in this for? And
Yeah.
I think we really need to ask that question before we start talking about being in the field. If you want to be a reader and keep that separate. If you want to be an investigator, fine. But you can't combine the two. There's no way. But there's a lot of people that do it. And well, it doesn't usually go very well for them over a course of time.
Well,
So,
here's the thing though. Okay, so I work with a paranormal team. I'm a member of a paranormal team.
mhm,
When I'm on an investigation, that's all, excuse me, that's all voluntary.
mhm,
However, I am there as a psychic medium
mhm. You
to
keep things
make,
separate. Yeah,
right.
you keep things separate.
It's separate from my clients.
Mhm.
It's what I'm
Mhm.
doing with my team
Yep.
as that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about psychic mediums on paranormal teams?
Absolutely. I think they're a very good asset for teams. We had a psychic medium on our team. She did some readings on the side. She charged for it, which is definitely okay, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
The only requirement we had is if she give any advice or readings that we were doing through the team, that those services would be free.
Right.
So what she did in her time was definitely up to her, and that was her business. I mean, she had her own, business name and business license and the whole nine yards, and,
Yeah,
and that's
as do I.
completely 100.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was completely 100% okay. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that's why I said earlier, so long as
Mm-hmm.
you keep that separated,
Yep.
you
Yep.
start going into homes as a paranormal team, no matter what member you are on that team, thinking you're going to charge these clients, it
No,
it doesn't end
Yeah.
good. You
nope.
know, it really doesn't, because honestly, and that's probably one of the most widely accepted, ethical terms that we have in the field is we're not charging these clients. Unfortunately, we got a few bad apples in the bunch, and you're going to have it no matter where you go. But that is one of the most common consensus in the field, that we don't
Hmm.
charge clients, and everybody knows that, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So, and absolutely, if you keep it separate, hey, teach their own.
Yeah. My other question and I always ask everyone this, so I'm just going to throw it out to you too.
Sure.
How do you feel about the pay to play places like Waverly Hills or the asylums, or where you're being charged to come in and do investigations that, 10,000 people have already done?
Okay, look, so man, you just hit me with a loaded question there, didn't you?
Yeah, I kind of did, but it is something that comes up pretty much on every show
This
we do.
it comes up, and it comes up for a reason,
Hmm.
okay? Because it's probably one of the most controversial feelings, and I say feelings because there's
Yeah,
no fact about it.
right.
I don't think there's a right or wrong to it. It's just, how do we feel, like you asked.
Hmm.
Mhm.
But I'll say this, we have a lot of historical locations that need the help in monetary, ways
Hmm.
to maintain their property.
Right,
Let's face it. Let's call it. It is what it is. They need money to maintain,
right,
and there's nothing wrong with I don't think there's anything wrong with the location charging in order to rent their place, in order to be able to do what you do.
right.
Um, Now, $1,000, $2,000 a night, eh. I think the amount is where I have my issue. We've got
Yep.
places here in Arizona, and the going rate for a lot of these places is, about $200. We just did a location that we were required to come up with $1,500 up front. Of course, $500 was refundable. It was a deposit, but then we had to also provide insurance. But what was really odd about it was we had to provide the insurance with their name on as a writer, and I've never experienced that in this field.
Hmm.
I haven't experienced it as far as the investigation part, but as far as like having like a psychic fair, I've had that where you
Yeah,
have
when you're
to.
talking about an event, yeah, but
Hmm.
we're talking about just a closed investigation,
Yeah, which is
is what we're
weird.
discussing.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
weird.
I've never, it's very rare that I even have to give insurance even on an investigation. If we do an
Yeah.
event where we're bringing in the public, which, by the way, when we do those, we pay for the location, and we limit the number of tickets that are available, but
Hmm.
those tickets are free. We don't charge the public. And
Yeah.
because ours is a little different than what we've seen most do. A lot of your teams will rent a space, and or rent a place, and they'll sell tickets, I don't know, 35, 40, $50 per person to come in and do their little ghost hunt tour. Well, um, I have a strong feeling against that as well. We're not tour guides. Okay.
Right.
Right.
We use history, we utilize history and what the historical facts tell us through our research that we do, and of course, in that way, we closely work with the historical, field very closely in our research. However, I don't know a lot of us that are historians, and I
Right.
don't know a lot of us that actually are tour guides. So on our team, I can tell you that none of us are tour guides, and we're not historians, so we're not your typical tour guides. So we're not wanting to give tours, but we are paranormal investigators. And so what we will do is we will go ahead and bring the public in and show them how we investigate, and go over, how we do things, teach ethics, the right way of, treating your clients, treating your location, talking about audio and taking proper photographs. Example, take them in threes. Don't just take a photograph and move to the next shot. Take them in threes. And,
Yep.
we'll do these things because, with the rise in the paranormal shows that you see on TV, it has really gotten a lot of enthusiasts out there just getting equipment and going walking around cemeteries and dark places. So, but you never really see these shows tell you the proper techniques of investigating. They
Right.
just show themselves walking around. So we're gonna explain the techniques. We're also going to let you sit there and be bored for a while too, because in the paranormal field, as you're investigating, it's not
Yeah.
like you see on TV. It is
Not at
completely
all.
different from what you see on
Yep.
TV. You're going to be lucky to sit there all night long in a dark hallway, nothing going on, and you're hoping your coffee kicks in as soon as possible. And you sit there the whole night. And then when you get done, now you're going to go over hours and hours. And when I'm saying hours, I'm talking hundreds of hours worth of data, whether it be audio, video, photographs, and everything else. And then you're really disappointed because you only got a high the
Yep.
entire night.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
I think we actually bring this up on every single show.
Yeah.
It is not like
Yeah.
you see on TV. See, the problem is those shows, they have camera crews following them around 24/7 for weeks on end.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
We go into a location, we're there for one night.
Mm-hmm.
One night. That's another thing. If you're doing a residential, okay, it's not like you're going to see on TV. You're not going to go into a location. You're not going to go through your interview. You're not going to go through your walkthrough. You're not going to set up the equipment. You're not going to walk around for an hour and a half to 2 hours. And you're not going to get the reveal all in a 24-hour period. That is not going to happen.
Nope.
Nope.
Not the way it works. Okay.
Nope.
These
Nope.
investigations can sometimes lead into years being involved. Most of the times, it's going to wind up being months, and you're going to go back multiple times, because there's one fact in the paranormal field that unfortunately some people haven't grabbed the idea of it yet. Okay. Is that the spirits don't run on our time. It doesn't
Absolutely
happen
not.
like
No.
okay.
Absolutely
You're
not.
not going to
Yeah.
go in there and talk about, hey, make this thing work, make this light up, and you expect that it's going to happen. Sometimes you'll get lucky, but not every time you're going to do that.
Mm-hmm. And I have
Not
actually been on investigations where someone has like a K2 in the middle of a circle of people, and they're like, just come on and talk to us, light us up. And as a medium, I'm standing in that circle watching the spirit on the other side of the circle going, no, not doing it. Don't want to play.
Yeah.
here's
You
the
know?
interpretation I get. Here's the interpretation I get from spirits. Okay. When you go into a new location, let me put it that way, especially. Think of it like going into somebody's home. They don't know you, and you don't know them.
Nope.
Yep.
It's proper to introduce yourself and be respectful. I've always found that you're going to get a lot better response when you give them sugar.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yep.
go in there barking demands and acting like you own the place. One of two things are going to happen. You're going to get hurt, or they're not going to respond at all.
Right.
And if you're like me, you start barking demands at me, I'm just going to sit there and go, okay,
Yeah,
I'll
me
just shut
too.
up.
That is my response as well.
I'm not going to talk to you,
Right.
Yep.
So just, be nice to them, and you're going to get, I think, a lot better response. Just remember that's their place.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they're spirits, but that's their place. Respect it,
Yep.
And
Yeah. And
the hardest thing to help them understand sometimes, especially when it comes to clients, is, and because they're fearful, man. They are so scared. Trying to get them to understand that they're people too. They have feelings, they have emotions, they have every bit of thought process that we have. And if
And
you're not
more.
going to like it, they're not going to like it. Right. They exactly. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's more pronounced for them than it is
Absolutely.
us.
Yeah.
yep.
So, respect them, and you'll probably get a lot of respect back too.
Right. Right. And I think,
But
and I said and more because they are in a position where they're not dealing with the same things we deal with in the physical world every day that have nothing to do with
Right.
paranormal investigating, So,
Correct.
yeah. Go ahead, Rez.
but
Sorry, I cut you
as I
off.
say, anytime I go into a location, before I even enter a location, I'm putting down tobacco. That's part of my roots, my heritage. That's the most sacred thing I can give them to honor them. And as I'm giving it to them, I'm saying, hey, I'm here to interact with you, conversate with you. I want to hear your story. I want to share your story as I'm introducing myself to them. before I even walk into the location. It's
Mhm.
automatically.
Mhm.
So I try to create that before I even step through that threshold, just to try to make that bond. So maybe they will interact with me. And like,
I've noticed more times than not. Yeah, I've noticed more times than not that, like you're saying, before you'll go in, you'll give these offerings and you'll have your conversations, and absolutely 100%. And I encourage anybody to do that.
Mhm.
oh yeah,
But also something that I have found is that more times than not, these spirits know you're coming before you ever get there.
Oh yeah,
yep,
they know.
A lot of times they even know you're coming before you even know you're coming too. So it's
Mhm.
it's it's very weird in that aspect. I mean, I've had spirits that just didn't want me there at all, just had nothing to do with wanting me there at all.
Yeah,
And they'll let you know pretty quick,
they
they'll
will.
react to your body, and you'll get your sensations, and your body will tell you, you know. Listen to that. You need to listen to that. Don't try to ignore it and act like the big guy on the block,
Mhm.
because you're not going to like the outcome. Just leave. It's that simple.
yep,
I've traveled to a location. It took me 2.5 hours to get there. And I literally rolled up in the parking lot, and I got the sensation probably within 5 miles of getting on location, where, and I'm not sure if you guys know what I'm talking about, but I got the sensation roll over me. It felt like you stuck your finger in a light socket,
Oh
and it
yeah.
yep,
started from your head and goes all the way down to your toes.
Yep.
And if you guys have ever had those CT scans where you get that like metal taste, that iron or
Mhm.
copper taste in your
hmm
mouth,
Yep.
it gives you that taste. And the closer I got to it, started about 5 miles before I got there. And once I got on location, it was completely unbearable, almost to the point where I was almost getting nauseous. And I thought, you know what? I'm done. It's time to go home.
Yep.
And my partner's like, well, we didn't even get out of the car yet. I'm like, exactly. And we're going home. It's
Yeah.
that
yep,
simple.
If it when
When they're
it
telling
doesn't
you,
feel right, yeah, it's time to go.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sorry we traveled 2.5 hours to get here, but we're going to travel 2.5 hours to go back home. It's that
Right.
yep,
simple. Look, I don't scare easily, and I wasn't scared. I took that as a warning that we just didn't need to. Now, it's a place we've been in before, and it's a place
Mhm.
I've been in since. But for some reason, at that particular time, I just didn't need to be there.
yep.
And so, I listened to that.
You have
Some,
to. You
Mhm.
yeah,
have
I
to
mean,
listen to
some
your body.
locations, yeah, some locations they know exactly who I am. I'm welcomed, and they'll interact. One location I'm dealing with actually right now, trying to get back into. Um, we had an experience in the basement where I was picking up activity from a chair, getting the EMF out of it, and seemed that every time I put my device in the chair, the battery would just kill. A brand new battery gone. And so I'm like, okay, so we put the SLS on it, and we got a figure from on the SLS cam. I thought, okay, well, let's try this. So I got another chair and I sat it next to it, and I actually leaned over with my arm like this, like I'm actually leaning into somebody. And I had another investigator. I said, hey, do me a favor and take a picture of us real quick. And they took a picture. And in the photograph, you can see a spirit in the photograph leaning right into me like this and smiling,
Yep,
Love it.
literally posing for the camera shot. So sometimes they do that.
Mhm.
I mean, it just blew my mind what I was looking at, because we got photograph evidence, we've got the SLS evidence. Then we had it on, we had documented the battery drain, and we've also got audio with that as well. I mean, so we had all these things happening all at once. And I love that as an investigator, because the
Yeah.
more you get happening at the same time on multiple pieces of equipment,
yep.
just even more solidly validates what you're going through.
It absolutely does.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
I have another opinion question for you. Okay, so
Uh-oh.
Oh,
um, well, no, this is nothing. It's just an opinion, but um, some people are more audio leaning and some people are more video leaning. So, are you more visual, more audio? Like, do you prefer EVPs? Oh, and I'm talking about like afterwards when you're going through all of this evidence. Do you prefer the visual or the audio or both, or you don't really have an opinion on that?
Um, so I do have an opinion, but it would depend, to be honest with you.
Okay.
example, if I have to study something, whether it be a piece of audio or a piece of video, if I have to study it, I'm throwing it out.
Okay. But as far
And
as review goes, though, because you have to review.
um, my very first glance, if I can stare at a photograph and I can see physically what's there and there's no question about it, then I'll trust that. Yes. But if,
Okay.
like I said, if I have to study it and I've got to put time into, well, am I seeing what I think I'm really seeing? Do I got to blow it up? Do I got to pixelate it? Do I have to do this? Do I have to move that? Or, you know what? If you got to do all that, throw it out.
Yep.
Same thing with the audio.
Yeah.
They talk about these classes of audio, class A, class B, class C. Look, there's only one audio. Okay. There's one EVP. If you can't clearly, definitively figure out what that thing is saying within hearing it twice, then you can just throw it out too. I mean, because
Yeah.
what happens the more you study it, the more you start thinking into it, and the more your mind starts playing tricks on you.
Yep.
And the more metricing you can do, the more you start hearing things that aren't there. So that's really what happens. So if you can't break down what's going on with them glancing at it twice or listening twice, it's time to go. I can tell you that a close colleague of mine here, his name is Jeff Woolwine. Jeff Woolwine loves to investigate, although he's not the investigator type that we would think of in the field. But
Okay.
what Jeff is I mean, he is a whiz with petroglyphs and understanding them. He's more in the UFO kind of scene. And he loves to be able to interpret what these petroglyphs are telling us in association to UFOs and what it means between the two in a correlation. But he did come out with an idea not too long ago that I found to be very interesting. We went on an investigation together and we got a piece of audio that we just couldn't understand. And honestly, it sounded like a sigh, is what it sounded like. And he goes, do you mind if I put this in my program here that I can actually reverse the audio and see what we might get out of that? I'm like, reverse the audio? What are you going to get from reversing a sigh? Oh my lordy. He did it. And I'm like, let's do it. It was phenomenal. It was a full sentence and it just sounded creepy. And you could definitively hear what it's saying, but it was a sigh forward. And it just rose to hair on the back of my neck. And I'm like, how did you know to do that? He goes, I've played with that a couple times before where we just weren't getting anything. And I actually reversed the audio and played it backwards. It's kind of like, the old day of playing the records backwards and you get to see, what they say, the satanic messages.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same theory.
The satanic panic era that we went through.
Yeah. Okay. So you remember that. Okay.
Yep.
So it's the same effect of that is you're playing the audio in reverse.
Okay.
And it's insane what it's doing. He actually captured a video clip of a baby that was throwing a fit on the floor, and the recording, he actually reversed the audio. And it's amazing what this kid is saying. This kid is basically talking about his mom is making fun of him and basically putting his video out for game. Whoa. I mean, blew my mind. So, I mean, the whole playing the audio and reverse thing is something that I've been really toying with and seeing what we can come up with on that, because that is just phenomenal, playing it backwards and what you catch. It's just
That is
amazing.
interesting because this is the first time I've heard anyone doing that in the paranormal field.
It's been going on for a while now.
Has it? This is the first time I've heard of it.
Yes, the first time I'd seen it done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the first time I've seen it done. And when I experienced it, like I said, it just blew my mind. And so now, and it kind of sucks because now we're listening to audio forward, which depending, that's hours of data right there. But now you got to play it backwards in reverse and listen to it again,
Yeah.
What were you saying, Rez?
I think the first person I seen do it was about 2 years ago on YouTube. The show was called, I think, Proving Demons. And he was claiming that angels speak in reverse. And so he was trying to take EVPs that way, and he was running them back again in live time right there on his investigation. And you don't really hear much going forward, but when he reversed it, you hear there's a conversation there.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that
And
kind
it
of sparked
usually,
an interest in me.
Is that kind of like
not
an
only that,
audio? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
but you can pretty much determine that if you're getting a message that you can actually make out in reverse, that's pretty much a for sure way of determining what you're dealing with is not a human spirit. This is a spirit that has never lived before, because
Yeah.
human spirits don't talk in reverse.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like reverse image photography, but audio.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. You can compare it to the two, yeah.
Yeah. The best comparison is like what you said is when we used to play our records backwards and find hidden meetings or
Exactly.
hidden
Yeah.
messages.
So if it's not
Yeah,
a
that's
human
exactly
voice,
what it
how
is.
do you explain the kid that is throwing a temper tantrum and they play it backwards and it explains that he's upset about his mom making
What
fun of
we're
him?
what we're figuring on that is that there is some type of demonic or some type of inhuman, let me put it that way, because I don't
Okay,
like saying demonic,
right.
but some type of inhuman attachment. The other thing that we can theorize, because children are still so close to the spiritual world, they just got here,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yep.
see. And so, we're believing that the children still have a lot of the capabilities that they had in the spirit world before coming here. And what we see in that, and what we believe, is that some of those abilities still bleeding through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And from a young age, if you nurture them abilities,
Mm-hmm.
it produces, your
Right,
mediums and your psychics and everything in most cases. My
right.
That's my
kid,
case. Yeah, that was
I
my
was I
case.
was closed up.
Yeah.
My parents didn't want me to be considered a freak in school,
Oh,
talking about this around other kids and everything else. So fold him back up when he's ready, he'll come back out of his shell
yeah, and
type of
and and
deal.
I was a little guy back in the 70s. I was born in 71, so coming up in the 70s, and I'm sure it was even worse in the 60s and before. But I know in the 70s, you didn't discuss this stuff. They put you in the loony bin.
You
You
didn't
were
discuss it
considered.
in the 80s either.
No, it was very, very minimal in the 80s too. But most
Yep.
definitely, they try to put you in a straitjacket without a doubt in the 70s.
I have
Yep.
to say, I'm just going to interject this. I know Rez already knows my story, but um, it was determined when I was a toddler that I had this ability,
Mhm,
and I was having prophetic dreams. My
mhm,
family never discouraged it.
mhm,
Never discouraged it. They didn't
mhm.
understand it, but they didn't discourage it. Nobody ever tried to tell me that was not okay. And
Right.
so I never lost the ability. It's been with
Yeah.
me my
It
whole
was
life.
nurtured.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It was
in a
nurtured,
way,
and that's very
yeah.
fortunate.
Yeah, in a
Yeah,
way it
and
was
that's very
nurtured.
fortunate.
The thing was though that
Yeah.
because my parents didn't identify with the same ability, even though they didn't discourage it, they didn't know how to exactly encourage it. They didn't know exactly like how to help me deal with it. So
Mhm,
I grew up thinking everybody else was doing the same thing I was. I didn't
mhm,
know it was unusual. I didn't
mhm.
know that other people couldn't do it until somebody, like I think I was in 7th grade, said, "Will you just stop being weird?" I didn't know it
Yeah,
was
I mean,
weird.
even up to as late as probably up through the mid 2000s, probably. I mean, you didn't have a number to call up that you dialed 1-800 to help my paranormal situation. You
Right.
just didn't
No.
have that going on. And that was even, like I said, as recent as the mid 2000s. So
Mm-hmm.
most certainly in the 80s, and even the
Yeah.
90s, you did not have that available.
No.
And fortunately, on one piece of the coin, we have that. The
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate piece is, a lot of teams are out there that are teams that aren't technically investigative teams.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
you have to
Right.
Thrill
be careful.
seekers.
Right. And I'm a few years older than you are, Eldon. So,
Yeah.
growing up in the 70s,
Mhm.
nobody, I mean, it's like, I guess nobody really paid attention to it, but I never thought it was unusual. So for me to be able to do
Yeah.
that through my whole life, I feel very fortunate in that, and there are some
Oh
of
yeah.
us who were not discouraged, who
Oh
grew up
yeah,
with this. And
exactly, and
yeah,
yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, there are those families, however, that don't believe in that. Like I grew up in a family that we belonged to the evangelical church right across the street. My parents was very embedded in that, and they were very strict on the way they taught things. So most certainly it went against everything I was taught, but
right,
my, what I was seeing, my eyes couldn't possibly lie to me. I mean, I know
right,
what I saw, you
right,
know. Um, so I could never get away from that. And it was at that point that I guess I'm not religious. I mean, I do believe in God, I do believe in Jesus, but I lost a lot of faith in any type of religion.
right.
And it stems from that when I was a young child.
Yeah. I mean, as someone who channels Christ, yeah, that has nothing, he has nothing to do with the religion. Like they're just not the
Well,
same thing. And so,
right,
yeah, I
right,
completely agree with you. Um,
right.
I grew up Lutheran, so I was raised in a religion too. And yeah, I never talked about it in church, but it's not because I wasn't told I couldn't. It just didn't come up,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you
And
know?
see, in the church I grew up in, we talked about spirits. Heck, at the end of every service, you got a reading,
Mm-hmm.
from the minister or from whoever was doing the sermons that day.
Hmm.
So it was natural to us.
Mm-hmm. Well, I
I
think it's
actually,
very natural. Yeah.
yeah, and I remember going with my father one time out to speak with someone that was having paranormal activity at their house. Because back then, like you were saying, there wasn't anybody to call.
Mm-mm.
So you turn to your pastor, you turn to your minister. What do
Hmm.
I do, Father? And
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I remember us going out, sitting on a couch, and him showing some grainy footage of what he recorded with his big old uh, camcorder, like the one they used to carry on your
Yeah,
shoulder
the big
back in,
ones. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
hooked up to the
Yeah.
TV. Well, this is what's going on, and I could clearly see a shadow figure move across the hallway. That's
You
one of my
know,
earliest memories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just 18 years old, and we started experiencing activity in the house, and it was my mother, my sister, and I. My dad had recently passed at that time, and what we were experiencing, I now know today as being poltergeist activity, is what it was. I didn't understand it at the time, and I can tell you, I was scared out of my board. I'd sleep in the backyard. I didn't want to sleep in the house. Um, but I remember, my mom, she would cry and she was just distraught. She didn't know what to do because the things we were going through was just like, who do you call? The fire department, the police department? I mean, who do you call? There was nobody to call back then. And this was,
Yeah,
1990. I mean, so yeah, I mean, having numbers to call and having people on your side and having people be able to discuss it with you, I think that's a real big increase compared to what it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a lot of work to do in the field. I think we have, a lot of distinction between what we're doing out here. I think we have to be able to distinguish what we're doing. And I say that because we have to separate the thrill seekers from the investigators somehow, some way. You know,
yes,
amongst ourselves in the field, we've already done that. We've
Mm-hmm.
already done that, but now we have to get that out to the public. And what I mean by that is we know what a paranormal investigator is as opposed to a ghost hunter.
Mm-hmm.
yep,
Plain and simple. A ghost hunter will always find one, regardless.
Yep.
A paranormal investigator, is you guys know. But now to try to get this out to the public is very difficult because they don't even know the difference between the two. To
Right.
them, you're just some quack that thinks ghosts exist.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
So to get people to understand that is very difficult, and it doesn't help when you're not even recognized as a field of study.
Right.
It doesn't help. So
mhm,
you know, um, you do the best you can with what you got.
Well, I guess what we have to
Um,
do is that we have to recognize it as a field of study and just declare it to be one because that's how everything comes about anyway.
yeah,
right. That's where the whole oxymoron thing comes in.
Yeah,
At the
exactly.
paranormal scientist.
Exactly.
How do you consider the paranormal field a field of study? Because something that you can study is something that you can actually measure it against. How do you measure anything against anything in a paranormal field?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I have always maintained good luck getting one person in a body to do the same thing 5 times exactly the same way. And now you're going to expect a
Exactly.
ghost to do it? That's not going to happen.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think what needs to be done, I don't think that we need to change the field. I think the field is exactly what it needs to be. We've just got some of the wrong interpretations of folks that think they're in this field,
Hmm.
first of all. And second of all, we have to broaden our prospect on what study really is, because in the scientific field we have this closed mind to think that unless you can put measure against it, you can't study it, and I don't think that that's the case.
I don't either.
No.
You know,
I agree
so
with you. I don't think that's the case either.
you know,
Yep.
I take psychiatry. Psychiatry is a very good example. Okay, psychiatry is based on guesswork and looking at habits of people and behaviors of people. Okay. There's nothing that I've seen really scientifically, unless of course you put a CAT scan on somebody for brain damage or something, you
Hmm.
know. But when you're talking about somebody example that is, and I hear this quite a lot, well, they suffer from depression. Well, I'm here to tell you, okay, I don't suffer from depression, but I can tell you I've had, occurrences in my life that has caused me to get depressed at times, you know. And I think we all at some point or another in our life has suffered from depression.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
doesn't mean we have it doesn't mean we have an emotional problem, and it doesn't mean we have a psychological problem, but by the standards of the psychiatric field, if we're diagnosed with having depression, we have a psychiatric issue.
Yeah.
And that's a
Let me just tell you why. That comes down to insurance because you have to
yeah.
put a code down to get insurance to pay for it. Therefore, you have
Mhm.
to make it a
Well,
diagnosis.
okay, and you're right. You're
Yeah.
right in that, but here's how harmful that is.
Oh, I
Okay,
agree. I
is
already know what you're going to
without
say.
without even, and I'm not even going to talk about politics, but
Right.
let's just for a minute, put out there that in order to obtain, possess, or carry a firearm, example, you cannot have been diagnosed with any kind of mental disability or disorder. And if you're a person that lost your mother last month and you're now going to a psychiatrist because you're depressed and you're now diagnosed with depression, guess what? You cannot carry a firearm. Now that's ridiculous.
Yep. I agree with that.
So that now comes down to a a situation where we're now being diagnosed for the benefit of insurance at the cost of what? Now our rights. And that becomes a problem.
Yep.
You know,
And
I
a
went
lot of
through a
people.
major grief issue last year, and I
Mhm,
have, I've gone in for like physicals and whatever since then, and they
mhm,
keep trying to put me on medication to numb
mhm,
the grief.
mm,
No, I don't want to numb the grief.
mm.
It's a natural process.
You
It's a natural thing to feel
you have
grief.
to. Yeah,
Yeah,
you have to go through that
absolutely.
process.
Right.
Yep.
Don't try to numb it for me. I know maybe you're trying to be helpful, but I think that we numb too many things and we are calling emotions psychiatric disorders when
We're
they're
trying to
just
control too
emotions.
much. We're trying to control too much by medication. Okay,
Mhm.
and this is where
Yep.
it comes with our children today. You guys know. I mean, I grew up in the time that you stepped out of line. I'm sorry, but you're getting your little behind spanked. That's just
Yep.
the way it worked. You know, and you knew that if you stepped out of line, that it was going to happen again.
Yeah.
So you knew better. You knew better.
And it
And let
wasn't
me tell
just your
you.
parents you had to worry about. You had to worry about Joe's mom across town or, your auntie or whoever
That's
would keep
right. The
pulling you up and keep
neighborhood,
you in line.
that's right. The neighborhood was involved in that, a lot more involved in it than there is today. And trust me, back then, your folks, they supported that. Hey, my kid
Yep.
comes over there and he's stepping out of line, crack his behind. Hey, you dang right, crack his behind if he steps out of line. Today, you crack somebody's kid for stepping out of line, and you're going to find yourself at minimal in court because these parents today just ain't having it. But again, back in 1980, you didn't see people storming the White House or the Capitol building either. Look what
That's
we got
true.
going on today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't
And
have
you want to
school
know why
shootings
that is?
either.
Look, it's not one person's fault for that happening. This has been coming since the early 80s that I know of. When we stopped disciplining our kids, I said it then, we're going to have a problem in about 2 decades.
Yep.
And it's been coming,
I think part of the problem is
and we're
too,
here.
it's not just about discipline. It's about we don't know our neighbors.
Yeah.
We don't know I live in a townhouse community. I know one neighbor and there are like 80 units here. I know one neighbor. We don't know our neighbors.
Yep.
So if somebody you don't know is cracking your kid, that's a problem.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's not a
Yep.
community anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
because
said it right
the
there. It's
trust
not
is
a
gone.
community.
You're right. The trust has gone away.
Mhm.
And it's like society itself is collapsing in on itself. Uh, the fault is, the community, but the fault is the community because of the community. It's
Mhm.
kind of collapsing in on itself. See, we don't trust our neighbors for a lot of reasons. I mean, today we don't see our kids going out playing like they used to. Why? Because there's too many weirdos out there that are snagging kids nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, so we keep them inside. So now that they're inside, we've now found things for them to do like PlayStation and Call of Duty. See? So now they're inside and they're eating bonbons, they're eating Hot Pockets, they're getting a lot larger than we used to be when I grew up. And now we're having health issues, and it leads to so many problems. It's like a domino effect, and
Yeah.
and we see it. And you're right. It's because we don't have a sense of community anymore. You
Right.
know.
I've been here 2 years. I know my one neighbor in 2
Mhm.
years. And I don't think it's because I'm unfriendly. You know, it's because we just don't get to know each other. Everybody is all caught up in their own little cocoon and living in fear and not reaching out to each other. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not the same as, it's no longer a village raising the children.
Yeah.
Right.
I miss the days of block parties where you
Yeah.
literally got together with your entire block, had the barbecue out in the middle of the street. The kids would play. Everyone has a good time. The dads would get
Yep.
together, have a few drinks.
Yep. The
The
police
moms would
department.
get together and bitch about the
Police
dads.
department would bring out those barricades, and they'd set the
Yeah.
Yeah.
barricades up for you. Yeah, I remember that. The fire department would come over and open up the fire hydrant, and
Yeah.
yeah, I remember that stuff. Yep.
That
You don't
stuff
see
like
it
that is
anymore.
what we need to get back towards. Because
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was
You don't see that
building
anymore.
connections with our neighbors.
Yeah, it's building
Yeah.
community, absolutely. But like I said, if my and I don't have an 8-year-old anymore, but if I had an 8-year-old who is in the park playing and I don't know any of those other parents, but one of those parents grabs my kid by the arm and smacks him on the butt, I don't know that person. I don't want them touching my child.
Well,
You s-
the general norm today is our 8-year-old would not be in the park playing by themselves with neighbors we don't know because we're not that trusting as a society anymore.
Fortunately, believe it or not, we actually have a playground here and there are kids on it all the time.
Wow. Yeah,
All the
that's
time.
pretty. Yeah,
Yep.
that's not seen here.
Yeah.
That is not seen here. Although you
I
got to
got
figure, I'm 60 miles north of the Mexican border, so as you can understand.
okay.
I don't know. I guess I don't live in that community, so I don't know. But yeah, I mean, there are kids here. They're all different colors. They're all different nationalities, and they're all out
Mhm.
there on that playground playing together. And
Yeah, yeah.
and
Well,
so,
we have a lot of problems with the immigration issue here,
mhm,
and trafficking, human trafficking, uh, child abductions, and things like that. So a lot of the trust level here to just let your kid go out and do what they want to do is a lot more
yeah,
minimal probably than it is there,
Yep.
because we are so close to the cartels and to the Mexican gang lords and things like that coming
mhm,
across. Yeah, we have
yeah,
a lot of that issue here.
yeah. We're
Oh
we're we're
yeah.
we're a smaller town north of Milwaukee, but there, I mean, I
Yeah,
know that there's still issues here. That's not what I'm saying, but because it's a community, because the complex has its own playground.
right.
And, you know, parents can be like sitting on their patio watching, and they're still right there,
Yeah.
but the parents aren't talking to each other. They aren't getting to know each other. They aren't, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So the
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
still isn't even being built, even though the kids are playing together.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah. They have the kids have community just fine.
yeah, the kids are fine.
Yeah.
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 Us adults were caught up in our day-to-day lives so much that we ain't conversating.
Trying to figure out how to keep that townhouse. So,
Yeah, how to keep townhouse or too
yeah.
busy doing this on their phone, scrolling through Facebook.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
see that a lot.
Yep. So,
Yep. That's true.
there are a lot of social issues, and we're not going to solve them all, but I think addressing it from multiple angles is kind of helpful because it's not one issue. It's
Yeah.
not
Right.
one
Right.
issue.
Well, I know we kind of probably got about 20 miles completely off topic.
And we
on
always
this
do.
question on
I was
the,
just gonna say I love the rabbit hole we just
but
went down.
Yeah.
It's very true.
exactly.
But
But
it is
I hope that
reflective
kind of
though.
really answered that question.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, going back to that, it just depends on the audio. It depends on the video, to be honest,
Yeah.
as to what I would accept, to be honest. But I don't think that there's either one better than the other.
Mhm.
It's kind of like something I've always been asked in the past on shows is, well, what's your favorite piece of equipment? It's like, okay, look, so that's another, deep diving topic. You know,
Mhm.
that question kind of always bothered me because that's kind of like a mechanic asking another mechanic, "Hey, what's your favorite tool in your toolbox?" There is none. You can't put a favorite. I might
Mhm.
like that wrench all day long, but if I've got to get a Phillips screwdriver, that wrench is not going to help me at all.
Mhm.
right.
I always grab the tool that I need for the job, whichever tool that might be, whether it's an audio recorder or a video recorder or whatever,
Mhm.
that would be, I guess, my favorite piece at the time, but maybe something else comes up and now it's not so much my favorite piece because I need something different because I look at it as a toolbox, you
Right.
Yeah.
know. Some people say that you are your best tool. And I guess to a lot of degree, I would have to agree with that. But as far as, to answer the question, as far as actual pieces of equipment, I just look at them as tools.
Mhm.
And, just depending on what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to get is going to determine the tool you grab,
Right.
So,
Right.
that was always the thing.
Yep.
So
But it went
here's
off in
a
a lot of different directions, which was awesome because I think that, if we're looking at society, that's kind of a macrocosm for different segments of society, and paranormal investigating being a segment of society. If we're looking at there's community issues, that kind of goes in all different directions.
Yeah, it
So,
does. And the other problem that I've seen with that concerning the paranormal field is, the misconception that it's, the attitude that says it's my way and I'm the only one that's right and you're doing it wrong.
yeah.
And it's like, oh, please, can somebody tell me who wrote the book to tell me the right way of investigating?
Oh, I'm
Can
sure
somebody
right.
several people have written books on it.
Yeah, and here's the next question. And tell me exactly what is an expert in this field? That's what I want to know.
There isn't one.
There's none.
No,
I've never met one in my life. I mean, and,
no.
and look, I've talked to like I said, Barry Fitzgerald. I've talked to Christopher McKinnell, the grandson of Ed and Lorraine Warren. I've talked to a lot of these guys, and they even have the same question: Who are the experts? I'm not the expert. I'm still learning.
No. Yep.
We
So
will always still be learning. That's the whole point.
right,
Yeah.
right. Unfortunately, a lot of people have the mentality, I'm the expert. That's my way. Okay. Good luck to you
Mm-hmm.
and many more to you, but
Yep.
we don't have experts in this field. And if you think you're an expert, well, I'm sorry, but you're probably not in this field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Rez, you started saying
So,
something earlier and I cut you off again.
oh, I was going to ask the typical question I always ask everyone: Have you had your oh shit moment yet? The one that really made you really second guess being in this field, scared you, wanted you to just drop everything, go home, say no more.
Um, so I've had a couple moments where I've thought, I'm done with this. It was not as a result of an oh shit moment. Um, it was more to do with the field itself, really. As far as being in the field, again, because of how much research and study I put into this before actually investigating, I kind of knew what I was walking into. So I'm not really an easy person to get a no shit on, you know. Now I've been startled a time or two, but I can't say that really to the point where I was scared.
Yeah.
But to explain what you're talking about, Rez, is exactly what I dealt with during that poltergeist activity when I just turned 18.
Okay.
Those were the oh shit moments. Okay. At a time that I wasn't even in this field, I hadn't started studying it yet. I had no idea what was going on. And I'd say that was my oh shit. But the more that I've researched, the more that I learned, and the more that I come to understand things, you know, I feel more comfortable sleeping in a cemetery at midnight than I do in Central Park, New York.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
agree
Um,
with
the
that.
well,
it's
yeah.
not the it's not the spirits that scare me, and I've had this question numerous times, hey, are you scared by the spirits that you encounter? No, I scared. Look, spirits are the normal. I sometimes think that us as people living here as humans, we are what's paranormal, because understand, we're only here just a short time.
Hmm.
Yep.
Our spiritual form is eternal. That's what's normal. We
Yeah.
think it's paranormal being here on this planet, but that is our normal state. So I feel very comfortable, a lot more comfortable with the spirits than I do amongst the living. And in a moment, I got a real funny story to tell you about that. But yeah, I do. I feel more comfortable. I feel more threatened by the living than I do the paranormal or the spirits. But my
Yeah.
son and
I
I,
get that totally.
Same.
so my son and I, we were here visiting a cemetery, and we were at the time just sitting outside the cemetery, and it's kind of, the cemeteries were kind of arranged kind of weird, and you might have seen some like it, I'm not sure, but you had a cemetery on one side of the road, and you had another cemetery on this side of the road, and there was another cemetery on the opposite corner of the road. So you had like cemeteries in different blocks, but across the road from each other, and we were kind of sitting on the road between the two cemeteries. And it's crazy because the driveway to one cemetery, you could drive out of one driveway right across the road and drive right into the next cemetery across the street. Well, we're sitting there, and my son and I, we're just kind of taking a little break, chit chatting. It's probably 2:30 in the morning. Next thing we see this guy walking out of the cemetery from our right, and he's coming across the street to walk into the cemetery to the left. It is 2:30 in the morning, and this man is carrying a shovel.
Huh.
My son spoke up. He says, he says, that's the creepiest thing I've seen all night. And I said, again, it happens to be the living.
Yeah. Yep.
Like I said, I've seen more creepier stuff from the living than I've seen from the dead. I mean,
Yep.
Yep. I have a friend who always used to say, I'm not worried about the dead ones. It's the live ones that'll get you.
there
Yep.
you go.
Yep.
There you go. So no, to answer your question, Rez, I really haven't had that, oh crap moment, and that, to scare me out of my wits. I'm usually not the person for that. If they start messing around and you're getting a lot of activity and it looks like they're getting kind of out of hand, I'm the kind of guy that gets a little angry, but I've also had psychic mediums tell me that you know, you can talk to these spirits, and most of the time they're not even going to talk to you because they're just not going to mess with you. And it's like, why? Well, it's your outlook. I'm like, wow, what's wrong with it? They said, well, they kind of know you're determined. And I get that because I've got this mentality. Look, you mess with me now. Remember, I'm only here for just that long. When I leave here, I'm coming to your world and I'm there for good and
Yep.
paybacks. Okay. And that's my mentality. Mess with me now. That's fine. Go ahead. But I'm going to get my day,
Yep.
and so they tend not to really mess with me too much. But on the other hand, I think it has to do a lot more with the fact that I respect them. I don't
Yeah.
Yeah.
try to challenge them. I don't try to, you know, trample on their turf and all that good garbage like you see some, shows do. And we'll just leave it
Yeah,
at
that
that. But
that Hollywood thing again.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Again, we'll leave Hollywood where Hollywood belongs.
Yep.
Um, I don't think Hollywood belongs in this field, and I don't think this field belongs in Hollywood.
Nope.
That's just my opinion.
I agree.
Um,
It's
you know,
we need to educate everyone between
well,
entertainment and
let's
the real thing.
let's think of it realistically. All right. Let's say you get a call from a client. They're scared out of their gourd. They need help. They're relying on you to come in and help them in their home. They're
Yep.
inviting you into their home. And if you're like I am, your home is your sanctuary. Your home is your
Mhm.
sacred place. That's your private place. So when you're
Yep.
invited in somebody's home, to me, that's an honor. To me, that's a show of respect right there. And the next thing you know, well, now they see you on a YouTube video or they see you on your Facebook page doing an event or doing tours of this and tours of that, or maybe you're dealing with somebody in Hollywood or even worse, you don't know what you're doing on that video. What's that going to show to your client? Are you
Yep.
for real, or are you just in this for fun? Now they start questioning you. So you have to keep in mind your integrity. You need to maintain your integrity. You really
Yeah.
Yep.
do, because if you don't, you're going to be out of it completely. So you need to choose. Do you want to be in the paranormal field and investigate, or do you want to be in the paranormal field as a ghost hunter and go get views and be a Facebook bandit and a YouTube, sensation? What do you want to do?
Right.
Because unfortunately, you try to intertwine the both of them long enough, and it's going to bite you in the butt.
You are correct.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we need to kind of wrap this up. We've been on about an hour now, and I want to thank you, Eldon, for coming and sharing and
Yeah, yeah,
talking. And
absolutely.
this was a really good conversation, and I
Yes.
think our viewers are really going to enjoy it. Um,
Absolutely.
excuse me. So, as I always end up saying at the end, like, subscribe, ring the bell, notifications, share. We have some really important information that's being shared in these shows, and I think that the more people who get this information, the better this field is going to get. I think right now it's in kind of in its infancy again, and so there's problems as we grow, but
Yep.
it'll get better. It'll get better, but the more good information that's out there, the better it's going to be. So,
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
remember, not only are we leaving this for this current generation, but for generations to come.
mhm,
This is we're setting down basically the baselines of what future investigators or future researchers are going to be looking at.
mhm,
So that's the one thing I
right.
do love about fact of what we're doing.
Yeah, me
We're
too.
giving them knowledge, giving them advice. Long after we're gone, this will still be here.
Yeah, once it's online, it's
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
locked in.
It's locked
It's
in.
recorded. It's down in history, buddy. It ain't going
Yep.
anywhere.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, thanks again, Eldon. I really appreciate all of your wisdom and your sharing, and I hope that more of
Yeah,
us enjoy
guys,
it.
and again, thanks for having me on. And I love giving out the message and giving my perspective on things. Of course, you don't have to agree with me, and that's okay. We can just agree to disagree sometimes.
Hmm.
But
Hey,
that's what it's
that's
about, and that's
fine.
what we have to learn to be able to do in this field is to just agree to disagree and move on. You
Yeah.
know, and that's what's important about it. But either way, at the end of the day, we're still brothers and sisters in this field, and we still have to respect each other and hold that love for each other. And with
Absolutely.
that being said, guys. I appreciate what you're doing. I love your show, and
Thanks.
Thank
give me
you.
back on again, sometime, and
Oh,
we'll have
Yeah.
another
definitely.
conversation.
Yeah,
We'll definitely have you
absolutely.
All
back in
right,
the future. Now, if anyone wants to get a hold of you or your team, how would they go about doing that?
man. That's very simple. So on Facebook, you can look us up there, McInville Paranormal. You can also email us at McInvilleParanormal.com. It's pretty cut and dry. Um, so you can get us there. McInvilleParanormal.com is our website. You can find us there as well. Paranormal Family Channel, you can always get its links through the Paranormal Family Channel on Facebook. So you can find it there. You can also access the Paranormal Family Channel through our website on McInvilleParanormal.com. So we've definitely got our presence there. All you got to do is just
Awesome.
type it in. You can even Google search it, and it's going to be there. Just click on it, and we're right there.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you. All right. Take care,
All
everyone.
right,
See you
guys.
All
next
right,
time.
guys.
Okay.
See you next time.